Hey, welcome to the James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Kamala Harris is going to make a trip to the border, and a lot of people are paying attention to this because this is an oddity in any presidential election. Usually the biggest issue is the economy. This time, in many surveys, it shows to be the border. And we don't have a whole lot of clues on what her border policy is, even though she was the border czar. But yesterday on MSNBC, it sounded like she was leaning into maybe having an amnesty program.
I will bring that bill back and I will sign it into law. And we need a comprehensive plan that includes what we need to do to fortify not only our border, but deal with the fact that we also need to create pathways for people to earn citizenship.
Yeah, pathways for people to earn citizenship. That sounds like amnesty. Tom Homan is back on the James Show from the Heritage Foundation. Am I right? Does that sound like amnesty to you, Tom?
It's absolutely amnesty. I heard her say to fortify the border. Let's remember, she broke the border. She stopped building the wall. And right now, if you go to government, the wholesale website in GSA, they're selling those 31-foot steel beams, those balusters, for $1. So if she's going to fix the border, why the hell are they selling all the pieces for the penny on the dollar? She's just a stone cold liar when it comes to the border, and it sickens me what she says.
Well, it's the job that she's done has been politically unpopular. So is this border trip going to do anything to fix that?
Absolutely not. Now people are paying attention. Look, like I said, she broke the border. She was handed the most secure border in my lifetime after President Trump. They signed 94 executive orders and destroyed that border. We went from the lowest numbers in 45 years to historic, never seen before illegal immigration, over 10 million. We got 250,000 people dead from fentanyl. We got a 600% increase in sex trafficking of women and children. We got more terrorists coming across the border the last 4 years than we've had in the last 20 years combined. So she has caused this issue, and I would frankly be ashamed if I was her to go to that border and stand there amongst the men and women of the Border Patrol, who she slandered after the horse patrol incident. She compared ICE to KKK. If I was her, I'd be hiding as far as I can from these men and women who secure that border every day.
Well, I know it's not going to be good for the situation at the border, but could it alleviate some of the political pressure on her? Could it be popular with voters?
If they buy her game. But, anybody that does her research, look at the data under Trump, look at the data under them. Look, this border chaos, what's happening on our border, it's not by accident. It's not by incompetence. It's not because they mismanaged it. It's by design. Let's remember, President Biden ran on open borders. He said he's going to put a moratorium on deportation. He's going to end ICE detention. He's going to give free health care to illegal aliens. They won't be detaining illegal aliens. Kamala Harris says she wants to end all ICE detention facilities and give amnesty. They also want to give free health care. They know, they're not stupid. They knew when they were running for office that they're opening the floodgates. When you make those type of promises to the entire world, they're going to come, and they did.
Well, one thing we learned about the Springfield, Ohio situation, whether or not they're eating dogs and cats, is the multiple reports of people saying that these Haitians are being flown in, so they're not coming out on their own dime. The taxpayers are sending planes out to pick them up and bring them over here, and then when they get here, there's all kinds of money loaded on these EBT cards, some for food stamps, some for straight up cash benefits. They also get housing allowances. I don't remember this program being passed through Congress. Where did this even come from, Tom?
Well, again, they create what they call these legal pathways when aren't legal at all. The Haitians, let's understand these Haitians, they're coming into the CHNV program. They're bringing 30,000 illegal aliens a month into our inner city airports from Haiti, Nicaragua, Cuba, and Venezuela. 30,000 a month. And here's what they don't talk about. People need to know. Those four countries, Cuba, Nicaragua, Venezuela, and Haiti, well, if these people all lose their case and all get ordered deported, guess what? None of those four countries accept their people back, which means these people are here forever. This administration knows that. So let's bring 30,000 in. We know they don't qualify for asylum, but who cares? Even if they lose asylum, we can't remove them. This is the untold truth about what they're doing. So they're bringing these people in, knowing the end game is they never leave.
Yeah, well, Elon Musk retweeted that clip I just played where she says we need to find a pathway for citizenship for all these people. He says that they are importing voters. And if that's the plan, I mean, it's really transparent if they try and bring in these people all illegal, give them some paperwork, give them the means by which to stay, and then say, well, we've got to do something. I guess we'll just give them all status or citizenship or whatever. That is looking more and more to be not a conspiracy theory, but the very obvious truth. They are importing voters.
Well, they absolutely see a future political benefit for doing this because they unsecured a secure border. I mean, who the hell does that? Who wants more illegal immigration? Who wants more illegal drug flow? Who wants more sex trafficking? Who wants more terrorists? Look, they see a political benefit in this. And look, they have a backup plan. Let's see these people. Let's say zero of them vote. Zero of them never vote. Here's what they've also done as a backup plan. Joe Biden, when he signed 94 executive orders abolishing everything we did under Trump, he also overturned the Trump census rule, which means millions of people that are being released in our sanctuary cities will be counted in the next census. So when they reproportionate seats in the House, that means more seats in the House for the Dems, which means the Democrats control the House forever because they're going to gain seats from this illegal alien population in sanctuary cities during the census. This is their plan. So they don't even have to vote. They're going to control Congress just through the census alone.
All right. Thank you very much, Tom Homan, Heritage Foundation. How do they find your work outside of WBAP, sir?
Thank you, sir. I'm going to keep fighting.
All right. So we will follow the trip to the border. We'll see if she says anything that's a little more than salad. Heck, even if she says salad, we'll probably play that. The point is this is the most important issue to the most amount of voters in this election. Will this help? Will this give the people an excuse who are concerned about the border to worry less about Kamala's stance? 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. This is The James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome to The James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Just keeping track of the election because we are only 40 days away from election 2024. So forgive me if we're a little excited over here at WBAP. This is kind of our Super Bowl. This is our Olympics. We only get to do it every 4 years. And so we're going to be watching the daily movements because it really is that close that any day someone could blow the election or any day someone could blow the election wide open. And one of the biggest issues is immigration. Kamala has been asked about her policy, given word salad answers. Kind of hinted at amnesty yesterday, but also announced that she's going to be going to the border. Really? I mean, of course, you have to assume everything happening within 40 days of a presidential election is for politics and for show. But, I mean, could we get something good out of this? Could she actually go down there and say, oh, my goodness, we need to do something about this? Or is there just no chance? She's just one-track mind. She's going to do what she was going to do anyway, and the border is just to shut up her critics. 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. Ray, Grand Prairie, you're on WBAP. What do you think about Kamala's border trip?
I think if she really does she'll come to the border state like Lubbock or Marshall or DFW Metroplex, but I don't think she'll go to the actual border. But if she does and ends up in either El Paso or Brownsville, she's going to have to send people down to clean it up. The sex traffickers, rape and molest women and children, and they throw their underwear on the nearby trees like trophies.
Okay. All right.
And they're going to have to clean that up before her camera crew sees it.
Well, we do. You're not wrong in precedent because there was the criticism like, hey, you're the border czar. You need to go visit the border. And she's like, yeah, I do. And so she went to like Minnesota, like Duluth or something. We're like, no, not the Canadian border. You need to go visit the Mexican border. And you think this is a joke. You can go do some Google searches after this, Ray.
I believe you.
Yeah. Then they were like, dude, you need to go to the Mexican border. 3 months later, she flies down to the border between Mexico and Guatemala. And it's no, not that one, the one that we share, the United States and Mexico. So eventually she goes down to El Paso, and then she went from like the airport to like a staged event that the mayor was hosting downtown. She never actually went to the border. She just went to El Paso. So really, I don't think she's been to the border at all.
She's been to a border state, but not the border.
Right. All right.
There's the second thing I'd like to ask you for your help on.
Sure.
You know how they're always campaigning about abortion rights and everything like that? That's the only thing they really talk about. I've never heard anybody say anything about the father's right to a baby. Is there anything that you can say or do to shed light on that?
Well, the reason why that doesn't come up is because that's a legitimate pushback on the idea of just free, wide open, anytime you want abortions. And this is a really tough subject because the people who are in the middle or the people who are in the gray area outnumber the people who are either 100% pro-choice or 100% pro-life. But since we're not as excited about it, we're not as bombastic about it, we're not as sensational about it, we get our heads bitten off. And so if you raise your head in the middle, you'll get your head bitten off by your liberal friends who think, abortion at all times. And if you're in the middle, you might get your head bitten off to a lesser degree by people who are pro-life. The father being in the mix helps the pro-life crowd because it gives an excuse to restrict abortions. And that's why they don't bring it up. That's why they don't have an answer for it at all. And that's something that you're right, that should be brought up more by people who are pro-life. It's like, look, even if you are going to sign off on abortion, shouldn't both of the participants in making the baby shouldn't they have to be okay with it? But then you run into some weird things like, if you had a one night stand while you're on a business trip, I got to go back to Hawaii and chase down some dude that I slept with. And yeah, I guess you do, don't you? But yeah, no, that's a good argument. And there's a reason it doesn't come up because it's a good argument.
Well, thank you for addressing it.
Well, thank you for calling the show. I appreciate you calling. That's Ray in Grand Prairie. If you want to do what she did, 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. And you all remember the cut there where she was being asked, like, why don't you go to the border? She said, well, we've been to the border. Well, you haven't been to the border. Well, I haven't been to Europe either. Yeah, this is a border issue where she was the border czar. This was her thing. And to have it be this much of a mess and have it be this much of a drag in the court of public opinion and have, most people that are your friends that are on Team Blue admit that this border thing's out of control and we need to get a handle on it. But make no mistake, she was the border czar and she was called the border. Everyone agreed she was the border czar. Until just a few months ago.
Quote unquote border czar.
Meantime, Vice President and border czar Kamala Harris facing some backlash.
And this will be her first visit to the U.S.-Mexico border region since she was appointed as the border czar by President Biden.
President Biden tapped Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris, to be the border czar.
They were very critical of Kamala Harris, especially in her role as border czar.
Kamala Harris, who was appointed as the border czar.
There has been so much criticism against Kamala Harris. She was the border czar.
So the border, if they weren't planning to address it in a major way, do not make her your border czar.
And then Aladdin found a lamp. He rubbed it. A genie popped out and he said, I'll give you 3 wishes. I wish Kamala Harris had never been the border czar. And the genie tried to make it so, just like in the cartoon, except with politics.
Quote unquote border czar. Vice President Harris was not a border czar.
She was not appointed the border czar. She was appointed to deal with the Northern Triangle. What he said about Harris and immigration was not true. She was never appointed border czar.
People gonna have to counter the misinformation. You already hear folks talking about the border czar. She wasn't the border czar.
Now, she wasn't the border czar. That's what Republicans labeled her.
Now what she's up against is folks lying about her border record, calling her a border czar.
The Biden team didn't declare her the border czar. They wanted her to work on kind of the root causes of immigration.
Calling her sort of the border czar, which wasn't necessarily the case.
Calling her sort of the border czar. We'll talk about this next with Victoria Churchill. She's on the swing state team for the New York Post. And we'll see how this is playing in those purple states that are really going to decide the election in 40 days. Coming up next, I have a new reporter on the James Show, some guy named Troy Aikman. I don't know. I think he used to play football in high school or something. He's going to give you a Cowboy report. And if you want to be on the James Show after that, 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. It's the James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. All you beautiful Texans, welcome back to the James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. We are just 40 days away from the election. Can I keep it going for the election? Yeah, thank you. Victoria Churchill is on the swingers team for the New York Post. Do I have that right? Is that what you're doing these days, Victoria?
Yes, swing state reporting team. I'm one of 9 reporters that we've got from across the country covering the election in swing states. Personally, I've been spending time, as I've mentioned before, on your show in Virginia, which is my home state, as well as Pennsylvania and North Carolina.
Well, I have news from the swing states for my swing state voter team member. It seems the capital of Wisconsin, Madison, has accidentally sent out duplicate absentee ballots. They sent out thousands of absentee ballots, and then they sent another round. It says up to 2,000 ballots for ballots that were already out there. Could they be more obvious about being sloppy and maybe swinging an election with some sketchy votes?
Well, this is something that our team has been tracking throughout the last few months is, voter fraud, the way that some people like to think about it. There's very rare instances, but what there is instances of that are very well documented are gross instances of government oversight, mistakes by, really just bureaucratic processes. And that is where lawyers and journalists have to get involved to shed a light on these issues.
But it's so obvious that it's an attempt to sway the election, and dare I say cheat, because, Madison is pretty much, that area is the only blue part of an otherwise red state. And you notice how we're not sending out duplicate ballots in red state America. Small towns aren't doing this. Red medium-sized towns aren't doing this. It's not happening in Wyoming. This is happening in just the one little blue dot in an otherwise red state. And of course, if you're going to get the extra ballots and extra votes out, that's obviously something that could swing the election. And Wisconsin's a swing state.
Oh, it absolutely is. And, there's been instances already of things that our team has reported on in Wisconsin. The major one has been ballot access. That's one that we've been tracking, not only in Wisconsin, but like I mentioned, in North Carolina, where I've been reporting on it. Michigan is another critical swing state where we've been tracking, particularly with RFK first wanting to gain ballot access and then wanting to get his name off the ballot in those states. So again, there's a lot in these bureaucratic processes that a lot of people don't realize. That just again, these unelected government bureaucrats, they make mistakes, or they accidentally on purpose make things a lot harder or a lot less transparent for the everyday voter. And with our job as journalists, I think that's exactly what we're here to do, is shed a light on all these things, whether that's in print like we're doing or here on your show like you're doing right now.
Well, your latest article in the New York Post is talking about what's going on in a place that really shouldn't be a swing state. We're talking about North Carolina, and the candidate for governor, Mark Robinson's in hot water for some inflammatory comments, and you were detailing how some ad money, some donors are pulling out. Could we accidentally lose North Carolina because this guy's such a goober?
Well, it's interesting. I spent 4 days in the state over the past week since the news broke of some really unsavory comments that he made online. That news first broke by CNN, and then it was kind of spread like wildfire all throughout the media. And it's interesting. I think there's a couple different things that we're seeing. So both Donald Trump and J.D. Vance held events in the state. Robinson not just didn't speak, but he didn't attend or wasn't even mentioned at any of those events.
Really?
Typically they go down the line and they say, this guy's great, let's get him elected, and let's get this guy elected, and so on and so forth. And, like I said, his name wasn't mentioned. But what was interesting is that, and this is actually my piece that should be dropping any day now, is kind of an analysis on this, but it's actually that voters, particularly Christian conservative voters, which you would kind of think this would be the key demographic that would be, turned off by somebody that's made, perversely, explicitly sexual comments in particular. But those kinds of voters are actually, at least based on my conversations, and I had over 24 of these conversations during the time that I was in the state, but a lot of these voters are actually standing by him, saying everybody's got unsavory things that they've said in their past, but this guy is kind of owning up to it, and he's
listen,
kind of a redeemed sinner, I guess.
All right. But Victoria, you don't have to answer this question if you don't want to. But in your article in the New York Post, in order to do the thorough research on what this guy has said and to go find it out for yourself and go to the original source, did you have to visit the website Nude Africa?
Well, I didn't. We went off of CNN's reporting on that. But, like I said...
Such a weird story, Victoria.
It was CNN, but they did draw some very distinct lines of how they came to those conclusions.
Well, look, he had a bunch of staffers who resigned over the weekend because of these posts and this reporting and what CNN put out there. And granted, it's from a long time. I think the dates on this in your article, 2008 to 2012. But having some goober up here turn off voters at the last second in what could be a swing state, I mean, this could tank the election for Trump. North Carolina is no small player. We're talking 16 electoral votes.
It is a key state, but again, even based on conversations with folks that I had over my time in the state, it seems like Robinson has actually been trailing, Trump in the polls for a number of years. And so I don't know, I think voters that are going to be turned off by Robinson, they are smart enough to make that distinction and, talk about Trump and Vance trying to distance themselves from him. Now, of course, the Democrats are doing everything they can to tie the two together because Trump did endorse Robinson in the primary in March, and he hasn't rescinded an endorsement. But again, his team has been holding events really back to back all across the state, Wilmington, and now J.D. Vance did 2 in the Charlotte area on Monday. Trump was back there yesterday, Wednesday in Mint Hill, North Carolina, so that's just outside of Charlotte as well. And, his campaign team, they're doing an event back in that Charlotte area tomorrow with Senator Tim Scott. So they're really hitting the ground and, making sure that their message is distinct and hoping that is kind of enough to convince folks to vote for him on the top of the ticket, even if they do fall off on the bottom of the ticket. But kind of at the end of the day, if that does happen, that's not actually something that's atypical for North Carolina. Obviously right now they've got a Democrat governor, but Republicans have won the state in 2012, 2016, and 2020. Again, obviously Trump is trying to do that again this year. For example, the race for Attorney General, there's a Republican running in that race, Congressman Dan Bishop, and he is trying to be the first Republican Attorney General in North Carolina since Reconstruction. But so, if you look at kind of a state that has a history of split ticket voting, I'm not necessarily saying it's kind of a death knell for the Trump campaign because these voters do vote straight ticket. And, interestingly, when it comes to issues, they seem to have a little bit of a dissonance between their preferences for national politics versus more local politics as well.
All right, Victoria Churchill, thank you for your time. Thank you for your great reporting with the swing state team in the New York Post. I appreciate you being on the James Show.
Thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon.
See, that's cool to talk to someone who just spent 4 days of the last week in North Carolina to sort of flesh some of that out. And if you want to go read her article, it's pretty salacious. Do not pass that link along to your kids. All right, if you want to be on the show, 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. Coming up next, I saw one of the worst ideas from Amtrak, and that's a bold statement. You'll hear about it in 5 minutes on The James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3.